Now what we're going to talk about is the subject of contact. Contact is what the rider provides the horse with their hands through the reins to the horse's mouth. And this is a broad subject, and it's one that there's a lot of confusion about, and it's a subject we could talk about for a long time and never get to the end of it. But what I want to do is just try to boil it down and make it to where folks start thinking about the process and understanding, I think, the proper way to do it to get better performance and better movement out of your horse. This is Monroe Miller. He's our head horseman here at Windy Hill Farm. And Monroe and I have spent a lot of years with each other studying this subject. And we've read a lot of books, and we've talked to a lot of folks that understand it better than we do. And I hope what we're going to show you is helpful. But it's kind of confusing, and I don't know why, but once you get it, you got it, and you're not confused about it anymore. But to get there, it's just kind of a process you got to go through. But what we're going to do is Monroe's going to demonstrate how to put this horse into collection and to get the horse's vertical, which is right here, his forehead, straight up and down, and then get an arc in that horse's back and neck to where you have flex and suppleness from the tip of that horse's nose to the tip of its tail. Well, if that horse is pressing against the bit and head up and stiff necked, you're not going to get that, okay? So you have to soften your horse's jaw and soften its poll in hand first. And it's all about pressure and release. And when you hold those reins in your hand, it's almost like, I heard someone say one time, like if you reached down and wanted to hold a child's hand and cross the street. You'd reach down there softly and hold that child's hand. You're not going to grab it and squeeze it. Or it's almost like squeezing water out of a sponge. Softness. So, you know, the horses should feel like elastic. Okay, it shouldn't be brace, and it shouldn't be resistance in your hands. It should be softness, like elastic, like this. All right, so Monroe's going to show you now. I'll step back and I'll just kind of narrate a little bit of some things, like how we show our folks that come here how to give contact. Now see how that horse, when he gives her pressure, he then gives her release when she gives him a yield in her mouth. So when she places her head where he wants it, he relaxes his hand and gives her sanctuary there. So it's all about pressure and release. When she gives, he gives back. Okay? So when he's riding this horse, he's not hanging on to it and bringing pressure back in that bit all the time. He's just supporting that horse in its mouth. Okay? So if you look right here, he's just working off the corners of her cheek and her tongue primarily. He's not pulling that bit back and getting leverage like some folks want to do with a big old chain curb and a big old shank bit to get leverage. No, what he's done is softened his horse where he can get that control and that suppleness through softness in his hands. So go ahead, Monroe, and you can ride her around and show how you prepare a horse for that and bend that horse. See how, look at her jaw, how she flexes his jaw when he turns. But I want you to look at his hands, how soft they are, and how he's holding those reins in his hands, and his placement of his hands. But, you know, the thing that I see here that I like the best is I see her jaw flexing, and like behind her ears, and like the top part of her neck, how there's suppleness there. Well, when she walks that circle, she's also arcing her back. Well, you can't canter a circle until you can walk a circle. Well, that's what we're working on right there. But see how he's not holding on to her, and he's not giving her like continuous contact like some jumping horse people or thoroughbred riding folks. They just seem to feel like they got to be just pulling back on those reins and giving that horse no sanctuary. If the horse does it right, they still keep pressure in that horse's mouth. Well, to do this correctly, in my opinion, see how he moves that horse with his legs and his seat, okay? Where that hand has developed more like a do not exceed position. See, that's not pressure there. He's just developed, Dixie, don't put your nose out past this certain spot. But now if you keep your nose back here, it's going to be soft and it's going to be very comfortable for you. But if you stick your nose out, I'm going to give you a little pressure. And then when you yield to that, then I'll give release. See? So he can get her to do anything. See? She yields and then he releases. So, all right, now come over here and I'll show you something else. For a lot of years I didn't understand these, they call them slobber straps, but it's like a rein extension here. It's a little leather piece there. You see a lot of folks have them. And these are like 5/8 rope, yachtsman's rope reins, which we seem to like these days. But what I like about this setup here, and I didn't understand it in the last year or two like I do now, where when he moves that rein, this creates a hinge effect. Okay, so she's going to learn to respond to the movement of that rein more so than the pressure in her mouth. So if you want to know if you're given proper contact, when you pull back on that rein, when that thing straightens out like this, kind of lets you know you've got proper contact. Okay, so when you got slope in the rein, see how when it comes back straight? So if you're confused about contact, you want that horse to respond by the weight of its rope and the weight of this. It's just like when we are in hand and we're moving our horse with our rope, they respond to the weight of that rope, not our tug. So that's why you learn to ride a horse with feel, and that's what he's doing right there. Now watch how just with the slightest little motion there, that horse will yield. Okay. All right, so now go ahead, Monroe, and you can canter a circle if you'd like, and we'll show them how that works now, to canter and a trot. But see how when she walks along, how she's supple and just kind of noodles along, okay? And see how now he's put her head in proper carriage, okay? He's not pulling her head around, and he's not guiding with his hands, just very little. Maybe his hands are 15 or 20% of the process. He's taking his leg and he's moving her around with his legs and his seat. Now watch how he points with his chin where he wants to go. See how he takes his chin and looks around? But see, when she's got her head placed correctly, he's not pulling back on those reins. He's not giving her pressure in her mouth. He's giving her sanctuary when she's proper. Now if she were to pick her head up or drop her head, he's going to give her some pressure. But see, like that transition was 85 to 80% legs and seat, 15% hands, okay? Well, he's going to school that horse doing transitions back and forth to where the least little motion, the least little effort on his part will be necessary. Well, that's the difference between a high class and a low class horse. See, she should go where he looks. See there? He's not using those spurs. He's using the insides of his legs. Those spurs are there to reinforce his leg. He turns his toes out to move the inside of his leg to move that horse laterally left and right. All right. Now stop and let's spin her in a circle, Monroe. See how he pushes that rein against her neck on the right side? There you go. Excellent. Now watch. He's not pulling her head. He's pushing with that off rein. See there? He's pushing. And he's taking his leg. He's got his leg in the right spot to do that. So now if his leg were back further, that horse would squirt right out of that circle. Now try that with your leg back, Monroe, and see what happens. See how she wants to squirt out of that circle? Now move your leg forward and see what happens. See? So leg placement is very important in that process. If your leg's not right and your seat's not right, I don't care. It's not going to work. He relaxes that inside leg and kind of pushes with the outside leg. There you go. Just like that. So see, nobody broke a sweat. Nobody pounded on anybody with a spur. You know, but that was all preconditioned, and you know, he's done a good job doing his homework there. So, you know, that's a kind of a early just preliminary introduction to contact, and we'll talk about it some more on how to achieve that. But can you think of anything else? Okay. But you know, when folks come here, this is what we work with them on to try to understand how to properly manage those reins and manage that pressure in that horse's mouth.
Kind of like when it feels good when you take a hold of one. When it feels good, you got to release.
Right. When they yield, release. So at first, when you pull back with your hands, don't pull back with your arms, with your hands. And when they yield, release. So like this, watch. See, watch, he'll release. There. Very good. So, you know, that in a nutshell is, you know, how we ride our horses, and to accomplish that, there's a lot of steps to get to that point, which I've tried to cover a lot of it, but now we'll break it down in some more videos on how to accomplish that, you know, in a greener horse. But I think it's important to see kind of where we want to end up, you know, before we start out with the conditioning process. So with that, that's kind of how we feel about contact here, and if you follow that procedure, I think you'll do very well.